Hello and welcome back to my GTNH playthrough. It is Monday, April 6th, and we are up here by my main control area, looking at my ridiculously oversized crafting CPU. I threw down this guy specifically to finally be able to actually request the craft for the compact fusion reactor coils. At the moment, I have 300 left. Decided to make the video now instead of after these guys crafted, because doing a little math, looks like I still have about 2 to 3 hours for all of this to come together. But I have there are a few parts where I had to like limp this through to help get it to where it needs to be. But as far as I can tell, there shouldn't be anything else that jams it up. It's just time now. Uh, and all these things here are going to take a little bit. So what we're going to go over today, just a few of the things I did this weekend, mainly yesterday, to help speed this guy along and be able to actually do the craft. Like I said, I threw down this crafting CPU. It's kind of just a goofy amalgamation of a bunch of leftover CPU stuff I had lying around. And then the bulk of the actual storage is just this right here with a couple random stuff thrown in. I can't remember all I threw into. All these dimmer ones are the 4000K. These guys are the 16Ks. And then my random co-processors that I had in there just to make it a square. So I did that. It was obviously big enough for me to craft the 560. Now, this is a little bit of a lie. It's been going for a little longer than 9 hours. I started it last night before I went to bed, so probably closer to, I guess would be like 16 hours. But I stopped it and restarted it just because there was a few things that were jammed up and a few things I sped up today. So just to keep it rolling. Now, basically what I wanted to do was I wanted to help speed this guy along. So one of the main things that were holding me back was all the Labotron batteries we were going to need for it, specifically these orb clusters. Now, one thing I realized over the weekend that I was kind of being goofy about, if we look at this, the Labotron orb clusters, I was using this recipe, or like any of these. I don't remember specifically which of these three, but all basically the same thing, where you need to make this Labotronic Energy Core, 8 of them. However, there is and it's 51 seconds at IV. There is a much faster recipe, which is this one, which is 50 seconds at CPM. But if you notice, we don't need that intermediary Labotronic Energy Orb craft. Plus, it's also just cheaper overall for materials. So I did go with this one. I threw this recipe into the space assembler. And then what I noticed was it was going to take a long time, even with that. It's still faster than it was. When we come down here, now this thing is running at 4 parallels, so it's making 4 at once. But originally I had to save on energy because all the modules were too much for this. I had only 1 parallel, so I did up it to 4. The way I did that was I did go through and upgrade the power coming to this thing, so now it's running on UEV. And then on top of that, because that was still going to take a long time, I set up 3 more assemblers in parallel, so now we're making 16 of them every 12.5 seconds. With the current math of what we got left, looking at a little over 2 hours, or a little under, I should say, 2 hours for these guys in particular to finish. The next thing up will be, but that was a huge increase. It also made it so I actually had enough platinum finally, which is nice. And didn't even like really dig into my platinum supplies all that much. You can see I have 1.5 million. So honestly, if I had gone this route, we probably could have been having the compact reactor much faster. I did, however, still need a bunch of the Labotron engraved chips. So just to help speed it along, I temporarily set up a bunch more engravers in parallel up here. Now I had to disconnect some channels to get this to work. So These guys were just temporary. Two of them were already back offline. But this helped speed that up to get it to the point that we're just crafting the clusters. Next up, I struggled a lot with the beamline this weekend, or the last few days. I could keep running out of coolant. One of the things I realized, though, was because I moved it onto the main network because I was trying to figure out, like, randomly would stop depositing super coolant onto this blue subnetwork. So I moved this blue subnetwork is actually the main network now because I had more than enough channels over here. I did originally have these on the stocking input hatches because I figured that would be faster. The only problem is, though, with the stocking input hatches is if you say you cross channels or cross networks for a second and the network flickers, the input hatch freezes up. No more super coolant, shuts down the recipe. So you basically are stuck with going with regular input hatches. And then I still would randomly have problems. So I did up them all to hyper acceleration cards, 4 of each. And that finally seems to have solved my issue. Yeah, it was a lot. That was probably one of the more frustrating things. It took a while till I realized what was happening, though, with the stocking input buses shutting the line down. Because for this compact reactor, we can see I have 500,000 left, but I needed to craft like 3 million. One of the other things I realized with the craft that I had kind of goofed on was I had not set up the beamline recipes for the high power and the ultra high power ICs. So that was kind of goofy of me, as well as there was some other one. I think it was the ASOC chips. Either way, all 3 of those are set up in there now, and obviously way faster. But that was another thing that was making it seem like the compact reactor or those coils were a lot farther off than they actually were. Those were really the only improvements I needed to make specifically for that. The next thing I did start to go on, though, was I decided I wanted to overhaul my processing down here for bees, specifically because for the coolant purposes, I kept running out of coolant, and it was because I didn't have Leadox or Callisto Ice because all of my the phthalic acid processing was all up on 1 mega LCR up here. So I set up a few more down there. I plan to set up one individually for each of the different combs down there. That's why that area is so big. But I have essentially run through all the phthalic acid, and it probably, if I had to bet, I bet it crashed again. So I might have to fix this. I seem to be having problems with the stocking input hatch. It's causing this error for me a lot. Yeah. Shut down, failed, yada, yada, yada. So that's annoying. But at the same time, I'm also not keeping up anyways because I think the thing that's causing it to glitch out is the nitric acid, but I also don't have benzene. So if I want to keep going on my B processing and beefing that up more, I do need to fix up the phthalic acid line, which means also get more benzene. I probably can just drill for it, throw up an infinity drill for it. Benzene. I haven't actually looked. I assume it's got an infinity drill. It does not. Interesting. I'll look into that more later. It's not too important, but that is benzene's causing that line to go slow. I could also, instead of relying on that line, because it is a little slow, especially for the potassium nitrite part of it, beef up this line, specifically the start of it, which is more of these guys, just to keep all these running at the same time. But I do think, I don't know if that'll be really practical, but it's definitely something it might be for me worth looking at to make sure it's all going as fast as possible, because we aren't keeping up on that front. I also started to set up an area. It's just an empty room, but I'm gonna put my crystal what's it called, crystal circuit chips down here because I do want to beef up the speed. Ultimately, it wasn't the thing that held back the compact crafting over here. Like, we've got plenty of chips and all that jazz, but it wasn't helpful. Like, it was just still decently slow. So I do want to beef up that. I think we go crystal for everything up to crystal up to UV, or up to at least up to ZPM, and then I am drawing a blank. UV circuit. And go optical circuit for UV and above for now. I think that'll be my plan. That'll probably, and then not have to worry too much about the wetware stuff. But to power all that, and also to power the B, you might notice I've got this long beam line going. So what I did, one of my side project while I was waiting for stuff to craft, was we come over here, which this is below where the nuclear plants used to be. So right up here in this building, between these two guys, set up a little middle room down here where we've got 3 Naquata reactors going into one big old battery. It's not too big at the moment, which will then feed into this transformer, which will then run power around the base as a alternative power supply for some of this mass processing. I did it this way because I feel like I'm spending a lot of time going through and upgrading random stuff, whereas if I just have a bunch of these transformers, that should speed it up. I had debated about doing this at all originally because I knew, or I should say no, I think I'm close to having wireless hatches, which will obviously be better ultimately, but I think this will help get me to that point a lot faster. And it wasn't too difficult to set this up. The only thing that was kind of a pain in the butt is I didn't pull out a stack of coils before I started doing this. And obviously the coils also go into this big old craft here. So I kind of debated canceling this and then just running it tonight so I could craft more stuff. But ultimately, it kind of worked out for the timing. But basically, I'm going to run this around the base to help me parallelize a bunch of circuit crafts as well as my D crafts. Because we can also tap into, this guy should be in line so that I could throw a transformer over here if I need to up that power. And yeah, that is basically it. I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to do the video today just because I knew I wasn't going to have time later on when the craft finally finishes, unfortunately. But I am excited to finally nearly there. Like I said, this will probably finish up right around my bedtime, in all honesty. And then, so tomorrow we'll be setting up the compact reactor and finally moving forward with that. In the meantime, the other stuff I was working on, I kind of nearly forgot. Did a whole little other start. I started looking at magic again. If you notice down here, I've got a bunch of bloody Icorium fusion casings. The whole reason for that is I was looking at making the draconic fusion thing. Fusion? Yeah, this guy right here. I even did the research for him, which took a long time. This was a very slow research. But so I got the blood fusion casings. I can't actually craft it though yet, because if you look at this recipe, I can do everything on here except for this right here, this dense Gaia spirit plate. So it does look like you're gonna have to dive back into a little bit of magic and learn Botania to be able to get this, because I don't know anything about that mod, and the only thing I've done with it was enough to get me mana diamonds for whatever reason I can't honestly remember anymore. So I have a little setup over here to fill up the mana pool, which actually is still low now. I'm gonna have to learn how to set up the multi-block and how those work and all that jazz, but We need to do that to be able to make the draconium fusion. We need the draconium fusion to, I assume, this is me just assuming, I'm going to need it because of this awakened core, which I believe is made. Yeah, it's made in here, so we'll need that. And then we'll use that to make all these different things here. So I wanted to get a head start on that while I was waiting on things to craft. And I think the next big craft I'll do once the compact coils are done is I'll craft these component assembly line casings. That way I can upgrade the UEV processing speed and yeah, go from there. But that's a little bit of rambling. It was a good amount of progress today, even though I don't really have a big multi-block to show for it, but it'll allow me to make said big multi-block tomorrow. I hope everyone had a good weekend and a good Easter, and I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.